Good afternoon. This is Rob Fields. I am the Director of Member Services here at PMA and really want to welcome you all to this and our ongoing series of web seminars. Today we are talking shopper marketing, which seems to be a very hot topic and only getting hotter. Before I introduce our speaker and turn things over to him, I just wanted to give you guys a quick heads up in case some of you are new to PMA webinars and are not familiar with this interface. You are now in a listen-only mode, which means you can't talk to each other and we can't hear you or anything like that. What we're going to do is go through the session, let Al Witteman do his presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end. You'll notice on the lower right-hand portion of that control box that's on your screen, there's an area for questions. Please enter your questions in there, and we'll take them in order during the Q&A session. What I can tell you is that I can see many of you are listening via your computer speakers. I do have the ability to unmute folks, but I can't do it if you are listening via your computer. So if you are anticipating questions or if you've come to the session with questions, I would encourage you to just check the under audio mode, that dial in click use telephone, and then dial in using the number that'll pop up, and then that way during the Q&A session you'll be able to actually talk to Al and ask some questions, okay? But we're going to try and keep this to an hour. I know everyone's very busy, so again, thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, our speaker today is Al Witteman, who's the EVP of Integrated Marketing for Acosta. He's also a PMA board member. Al is a very experienced shopper marketing, sales, and a retail marketing consultant and practitioner. And prior to joining Acosta, he was the Managing Director of Retail Strategy at Tracy Locke. So we're really excited to have him sort of illuminate some concepts he laid out in his chapter on in the shopper marketing book, as well as talk about that research that he ran with Indiana University. So without much further ado, I am going to pass this over to Al Witteman, who's going to get started. And Al, if you just hit show my screen on your computer, we'll be ready to start. And there we go.
Got it. Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, Bob asked me to talk about shoppability and to benchmark the original study on retail store and category performance that was done through the shopper's eyes. And it was really co-authored and fielded by Dr. Ray Burke and Neil Morgan. And as Bob said, it was funded and sponsored by Tracy Locke, my former employee. So hats off to both those groups. Let's turn to the first page, and it's always one of my favorite pages. And the reason is it's all about the end result and how to maximize and optimize your return on investment from your marketing investment. So from that perspective, I think the language of business is money. It's usually more than $1, I know. But in terms of looking at it that way, what are the factors and what are the things we need to measure to understand how to best allocate that dollar to get maximum return on investment? And are the factors that we're measuring today, do they identify and measure and explain the differences between retail environments, between categories, between brands, one store versus another? So a whole set of complex, hopefully we'll try and simplify some of it, experiences by if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and what are you measuring today, and are those the right factors? Let's talk about a definition of shoppability. Like a lot of things, there are probably as many definitions as different companies companies represented on the phone. But one of the things I always like to begin with is the traditional retail performance measurements and things like sales per square foot and unit and dollar sales and gross margin and DPP and return on inventory, and a whole host of measurement factors that, in our opinion, miss a very big piece of the retailer performance puzzle and how brands can potentially optimize their business in that particular retailer. And the reason that is they largely ignore the unrealized demand. And what that is the consumers who walk into the stores with some form of list, either written or not, and then walk out again without having made a purchase. So the question then becomes, how can you use the retail environment to translate that consumer demand into purchases of products that satisfy their needs to wants, and especially how can you make them satisfy and convert into purchases for our brands and our products. So let's talk about engagement for a second. And that really has two component parts. First is connecting consumer needs and making those needs salient to consumers. And then second, how do you take these needs and convert them into the purchase of products? So what it does is set up the concept of engagement and conversion. And in shopper marketing, as most of you I'm sure know, there's an old adage that if you don't engage, it's hard to convert, right? So that's key. So we really concentrated on shoppability from an engagement standpoint and making your brand's benefits match shopper needs in the shopping environment. So how do you do that? If you've seen me present before, you always see an old and new practices because so much has changed in the last 10 years. On the left-hand side here is the 90s through, let's say, 2003, 2004. And even though there was a focus on increase in sales, primarily through demand creation, and primarily through a supply chain focus, right product, right place, right time, right price, and manage those factors, there really wasn't ways to think about how do you think about increasing demand and create a chain. In today's world, we call that a demand-focused path to purchase at home, away from home, at retail. And we're able to begin to think of those elements that can be pulled together to be predictive in terms of communicating and connecting with consumers and shoppers. In other words, what marketing is all about, which is the demand realization. So the basic question is, what are the experiences like for your category? Is it the left-hand side of the page, confusing and frustrating, and you start keeping your warm? Or is it easy and clear and inviting like a walk in the woods? And do we really understand the shopper mindset as far as this goes by walking in the shopper's shoes? We know they have a limited ability to focus and a lot of things about the shoppers, but what are the triggers that can be used in store to be able to change behavior? So just a basic question, and hopefully these pictures make it interesting to you. So we did the study from the shopper experience. I know there's probably been as much written and talked about in terms of shopper experience as any other subject, but I think most of it is not through their eyes, and not through what she both thinks and feels, because experiences are about as much feeling as it is thinking. So that was the mission, to get inside the shopper's skin, walk a mile in their shoes, and understand how she or he defines experience. Again, was very fortunate to work with Dr. Ray Burke, who did a study on shoppability with a wonderful lady by the name of Paula Payton out of the University of Oxford. And I was lucky enough to be informed and involved in that at the tail end. And it was the first piece of work that I've seen that really translates the concept of shopping experience through a shopper's eyes into principles. And for me, that was a real eye-opener, because for the first time, it was through their eyes, and you could begin to think, well, what actions can I take based on that to actually get some actionability out of that. It was a really robust study in terms of the number of retailers and the number of categories and everything like that. And in terms of information, we went after everything from trip levels to ring levels to store levels to category levels. And what we're trying to do is align the brand, the category, and the retailer experience. We also included some key competitor level data and demographic levels and things like that. I must qualify up front that this was a equally important study for the combination of brands, categories, and retailers, but it is certainly not a brand only, nor does it represent all channels or all categories from a study standpoint. The design, lots of shoppers. It was really adopted using an electronic exit survey from TNS, NFO's National Consumer Panel. And immediately upon shoppers returning from the shopper trip, they were asked shoppability questions. Now, that's why I said it was somewhat qualitative, but there was a large enough sample to represent it by category, by stores, and also to get over this survey issue and ensure data accuracy. More importantly, each consumer mailed in the register receipt so we can match what they said versus what they did. And we could do that for each of the trips on which they reported. So I thought that was helpful and very consistent with the study. The objectives, as I said, to bring actionability to shopper experience in terms of improvements, to evaluate the store, category, and brand level for key retailers, and to identify the opportunities to improve consumer engagement, purchase conversion, shopper satisfaction, and customer loyalty. I know I took a gulp when I said that. I guess that's the holy grail of what we're all trying to do, right? Consumer and shopper engagement, purchase conversion, leading to satisfaction and loyalty. And whether you're a branded manufacturer or a retailer, that whole shopper satisfaction leading to loyalty, leading to increased sales is key. So I call this the holy grail in terms of objectives. The questions: how well are retailers engaging consumers' needs now, using their categories and brands to create demand? How does it impact shoppers from a satisfaction loyalty? What are the differences between stores and categories? Which are best? Which rank lowest? And again, what else is there that we may have not thought about that impacts shoppability? There are a couple really key findings that I think came out of this. And the first is that there are 9 factors that affect shoppability based on Ray's hypothesis that there are 5 psychological dimensions. That's behavioral, emotional, attitudinal, perceptual. and that these are the factors that work together that you can use to drive the environment's ability to translate demand into purchase. Interesting here, if you ask yourself in the simplest terms, if I could know with certainty what my target consumer / shopper, more consumer has in their mind prior to the trip, whether it's written or not, whether it's and whether it's category or brand planned, there's a list of 100 items. 86 of those items were purchased on the list according to our research, and 14 items on the list were passed. But interestingly, there were a total of 104 items ultimately purchased. So that was a key piece of information, and led to the conclusion that there were 17 unplanned purchases in terms of the opportunity to be able to engage and convert shoppers to buyers. So again, 2 paths to increase revenue. Of those 14 items that she or he had planned to buy, there were 14 that were passed. What were the factors in store that impacted that? And then there were 17 unplanned. What happened in that retail environment that led to the purchase? Another key retailer value was that better shoppability means that they have to spend less time looking to fulfill the list and more time browsing for their needs and wants, which led directly to increased sales. Up until this point in time, there was conventional wisdom that said, hey, if they spend less time shopping for the things they're planning on buying, they'll just leave the store and that will lead to less. Well, the reverse is actually true. So just looking at the factor definitions, I know this is a eye chart, but each of the factors work together to drive the retailer's environment ability to translate demand into purchases, and for those branded folks on the phone to use their brands to drive categories from an experience standpoint and to translate this demand into purchase. Here are the 9 factors. The first factor was perception, and it was transparency and lacking clutter. Can the shoppers easily and accurately interpret information? And does the store environment itself serve as a barrier to any other shoppability factors? On that one, we all know that shoppers deselect before they select. So what are the cases where brands and categories in certain retailers are being deselected and never have a chance of working in the retail environment? Affordance was a really interesting one, and at first there was some concern that the concept of affordance would infer to many people that that was about price value, especially the last several years where value has become so important. But what affordance was in this study was how well are the benefits of the products communicated by the retail environment. Convenience included 3 major factors. Service, was the right service offered? How much time and effort required to get in and out of the store? How much time and effort required to move through the store, find the right departments, find the right brands, find the right products? Relevance, which was the most important factor of all of them, which you can see just by the definition of it, Does the store offer the right products and the right prices at the same time? Enjoyment was twofold. One, does the environment engage our constant need to find new things? That was an innovation issue here, whether it's product or packaging or information. And the second one is comfortable. What degree does the environment serve the shopper's needs while shopping? One of the neat things, I think, by going through all these factors, when you look at the full study, was that if you look at those 9 factors that I just talked about, that equals your ability to predict engagement over half of the times. And even though, as I said, relevance and service are some of the more impactful factors, each one of the factors, even the lowest one, which was absence of clutter, can turn to be a very important factor in terms of satisfaction and loyalty. So by the rankings of those shopability factors we just covered, it's pretty clear that we can now have a correlation between what factors you can control in the retail environment in terms of shoppability and long-term satisfaction and loyalty of shoppers. That's summarized on the next page in terms of the 9 factors on the left-hand side, leading to engagement and conversion, as I said, in over half the cases, which leads to satisfaction and loyalty. And here's the third big aha, which is because of the loyalty factor, you can actually predict sales increases in terms of repeat visits and realized demand. And so if you think of the objective of driving traffic to a particular retailer category brand and engaging and converting that buyer to shopper with a happy shopper, and in being able to increase demand, as I said, with those 17 items, that's a big deal because you now can link those shoppability factors with the ability to engage and connect, with the ability to lead to satisfaction and loyalty, with the ability to increase sales. And again, back to that accountability and the end results, you can measure that every step of the way. This is a chart that just talks about, it's an actual piece of work that we did with a retailer and a brand co-marketing around experience to improve a very important category. And what it really did is benchmark the shopping experience. Those circles around this particular destination, if you think of them as ratings of shoppability factors, and you can then take them and understand where your high and low and where your improvements need to be made. Again, a lot of information on one page, but the basic attempt here is to identify where there are opportunities to increase demand by bringing the brand's needs, the category needs forward with a good experience. So again, we're right back to that almighty end result. How do I make smart decisions for my brand at particular retailers in terms of innovation in insights from a shopper standpoint and a retailer standpoint, and then the ability to innovate and customize and localize products and packages and pricing and merchandising units and promotions, and most importantly, communication from an education and inspiration standpoint. And how do I make smarter decisions on my brand at particular retailers going forward? And then what are the common issues that I can address by doing that, and by doing that with confidence, because you can quantify it. So again, some major learnings that we had was that we uncovered these 9 shoppability factors across retailers and categories of brands that shows each of the retailer and branded manufacturers what unique challenges and what improvements they can make. And one of the interesting things to me was, again, going against conventional wisdom, there were some categories that I thought have more of an opportunity for improvement through the things we do in shopper marketing versus others. And although you can come close, you cannot quantify it, nor could you be able to predict it without some of the factors and numbers in this study. So basically, the highest levels of satisfaction and loyalty, retailers and manufacturers need to work together to align that brand experience with category and with retailer. So it doesn't become just a brand or retailer, it becomes a brand and retailer. And it doesn't become a my branded experience versus a retailer or shopping experience, it becomes a and along the entire path to purchase. This is not a sell-in page as much as once you have this information and can identify these shoppability factors, then I think you can go through and do a real diagnostic analysis of the retail space through that shopper's lens and examine your business, your brands, explore different options, lead to better execution because you've got the branded experience tied in with the category, tied in with the retailer, all of which leads to the right engagement and conversion. And of course, you're able to measure it along the way. And based on what comes out of that, evolve the business to the future. So I think Bob was going to turn on the, so that I could talk to you and get any questions you may have. I think you can still hear me. I haven't seen Bob do anything, so I'm calling him on his cell.
Yeah, Al?
Yeah.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I actually don't have any questions right now, but let me hang on and see. There are a couple people who are listening via phone. I don't know if Richard Velez has any questions. Richard, you're on if you have some questions. You can ask. As well, let's see who else is listening via phone. Richard was the only one. And
I'm good. Yeah, I'm on the regular phone today. I'm good, though. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great. Yeah, I usually give it a minute or so just to see if anybody else has any questions. But, Al, you must have, like, explained everything with such crystal clear clarity that everybody's good.
Well, it's hard to assess whether the audience is engaged and has questions and comprehension looking at the screen. But I did try and do that. I was hoping to get some questions, or let me ask a question: does this make sense to you? Is there anything in here that you think will help you improve what you're doing on your business and results you're getting by doing that?
Yeah, most people except for Richard are listening via their computer screen, so they're not
asking questions.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have no way to unmute those folks, unfortunately. But I can tell you they're all still here listening, so you did a good job.
Well, I appreciate everyone's
Hey,
time. If
actually,
you have any questions or comments or want to discuss further, I will just say this, that the work didn't just stop here. I have continued pioneering this whole subject because this talks about aligning brands and categories and retailers' experience in store. Obviously, as we pursued and have really endorsed the path to purchase at home, away from home, and at retail, we've also pioneered the ability to measure experiences throughout that at different.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Al, I see there is a question from Linda Rogers. Linda wants to know what retailers' brands are getting this right.
In terms of what retailers' brands, I can tell you from a grocery standpoint, no matter how you cut it or slice it, Wegmans ranks up there as one of the highest in terms of overall shoppability. They're not the only ones, but that's one that just stood out. We all know Wegmans is good, but it was consistently good. It's hard, and I say that because it was good on all the different factors, enjoyment and relevance and affordance and so forth. And we actually ranked different retailers versus the different factors. So we have rankings on that. Obviously, a lot of work has been done since then, adding on to it. But what was interesting to me is if you look at the shoppability leaders, and I mentioned Wegmans, Whole Foods, Publix, H-E Bucks, a lot of the ones you'd think, and you look at their sales from a compounded average growth rate, it's significantly higher than the rest of the industry. So not only from a brand standpoint can these factors lead to engagement, conversion, satisfaction, loyalty, and sales. From a retailer standpoint, it also led to higher sales. And I might add higher margins.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone. I don't see any further questions. Again, everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We will make a copy of this deck available for you guys to share with your colleagues within your organizations. There will be an email coming later this afternoon that will be, again, coming from GoToWebinar@citrixonline.com. You'll have a link to a very quick 30-second survey. Wouldn't be good marketers if we didn't take a survey. After you take the survey, you'll get a link to download the deck. So that's the deal, you know. So I certainly appreciate you guys doing it because it helps us improve future webinars. And also, please, if you have any topics you'd like to hear more about, let us know. And again, I want to thank Al for taking time out of his busy schedule and joining us here. And thank you all. And please stay tuned for further PMA webinars.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great Tuesday.